Chapter 17 The Thorn Stuck in My Side, Part 1. This can't be happening, I repeated for the umpteenth time in disbelief. My legs took another subconscious step backward into the forest. At the moment, I was probably 10 paces away from where I originally stood, give or take a few. No, I couldn't comprehend what my eyes saw before me.
It's real, Hunter.
My voice echoed in my head. Each reverberation's sole purpose felt as it was just to remind me of the morbid fact.
Just run away,
it urged. I retreated a few more steps.
It is safer here in the forest. It is safer in our castle. Let the ponies fend for themselves.
No, I can't just walk away, I said. My voice didn't sound reassuring, though. The thought was actually very tempting. I took one step forward, but couldn't force myself to go any further.
And what would you do if you were to go into Ponyville? You cannot defend yourself. You can barely run. There are probably dozens of timberwolves combing through the streets right now. What will you do when you get caught?
Another scream pierced the night sky. I still could barely make out many silhouettes dashing around just in the space between the Everview Forest and Ponyville. And even then it was impossible for me to count just how many there were. There wasn't any doubt in my mind that they were wolves, though. I could just barely spot a few specks of the sickly yellow eyes every now and then. There was no way I could possibly make it to the town in one piece. I meandered over to a nearby tree and leaned against it for support. My mind was reeling from the situation, trying desperately to think of something I could do that was beneficial. Ponyville needed help right now, and what frustrated me was that I couldn't provide any. Every scenario I played in my head resulted in my own demise with no sort of aid or given on my behalf.
Just walk away, Hunter. You are as useful as a slab of meat right now. The only thing you can do is distract the wolves momentarily. You will just be a minor nuisance that can be easily disposed of. You must face the facts. There's absolutely nothing you can possibly do to save them.
I wanted so badly to throw back some witty remark against the discouraging voice, but I could not form one. As much as I hated to admit it, it was right. I was absolutely useless in a situation like this. But I can't just leave them, I repeated. A small anger festered inside of me at the situation. My free hand combed its fingers through my hair as I tried to think. Come on, I thought out loud. I have to at least get into the town. Maybe I'm just looking at this from the wrong angle. Yeah, the wrong angle. I slowly traced my steps back to the edge of the forest. The timber wolves couldn't have been here for too long, maybe half an hour. They probably didn't have the whole town covered just yet, and some of the ponies might have offered some resistance deeper in the town. Of course, they could have had to start their little invasion from this side of town, the side nearest the Everfree, so, hypothetically speaking, if I were to enter Ponyville from a point farther from this spot, then I would meet fewer wolves. It seemed to make sense in my head. Then again, I was starting to feel a bit too lightheaded to be thinking rationally at the moment. What are your 2 cents? I asked. There is no assurance that there will be a safe location for you to enter, the voice said. It sounded slightly irked that I wasn't immediately taking its advice.
If you do not find an entrance, then you would have walked for nothing and been more fatigued. Our suggestion still stands. It would be wiser to hunker down in the castle while you still have the chance. And the blood.
Disregarding that last part, I mumbled. The first half, however... I glanced to the left and right. Both sides appeared fairly clear of any trouble. Then again, looks can be deceiving. As long as I steered near the edge, my dark caution should keep me relatively out of sight. I think I'll take my chances. It was a rather rough and tedious hike all in all. Ponyville was to my left and stayed relatively out of my field of view. I had previously weighed the consequences of which direction I should turn my blind side to, and in the end I decided it should be towards the town. True, most of the havoc was now hidden from my view now, and if I ever wanted to check it out, I'd have to turn my head completely to the left to catch a decent glimpse at it. But I figured that the trees would protect me from being spotted from anything glancing my direction from the town. Besides, I was more frightened at the possibility that there would still be some timber wolves lurking in the forest. There was no way of knowing how far I had walked. My lightheadedness was becoming progressively worse. My left arm was sore from propping up the soiled rag of a dress shirt to my face. I rested against the tree, still standing, and shut my eyes for a second to allow my mind to catch up with me. When my nausea subsided and the world stopped tilting, I inched a few paces away from the tree line and squinted at the town. There was less havoc noticeable from my new vantage point, but barely so. It wasn't enough to prove my hypothesis correct, but it was enough to keep me moving. I was about to retreat back into the trees to continue my trek when the silhouette of a house caught my eye. The thick foliage that covered the roof practically camouflaged it from sight. Not a single speck of light escaped any of the many windows that littered it. A thin trail of silvery smoke escaped from what I could only assume was a chimney. The area surrounding the small structure was completely devoid of motion. Perhaps there was a pony in there. The smoke in the chimney obviously meant there was a fire, which in turn meant that there had to be someone tending it. I cautiously made my way to the house. It was far enough from Ponyville that the Timberwolves might have overlooked it during their raid. Actually, the more I thought about it, it was rather odd that this house was so close to the Everfree. With everything that could leak out of the forest, this pony must have been a brave one to dwell practically next to it. Maybe I would get lucky and this pony was one of the daring adventure sorts. If so, then he or she could help me with the little problem of going into the town. I crept past the open gate in the back. Almost immediately, a nervous clucking resonated from a nearby chicken coop. The sudden change in noise put me on edge. I was vulnerable now more than ever. My spinning head was making me already poor vision worse. Everything was starting to blur into a dark smudge. My body was still too fatigued from my last confrontation. I strained my eye to focus on my surroundings, and found nothing that could pose us a threat. Just a few rodents and birds that were staring back at me from their safe perches in the trees. With my paranoia still not convinced of my safety, I stayed close to the round wall of the house and carried on to the front door at a brisk pace. By the time I reached my destination, another noise sounded in the dark. I whirled around on the spot and glared into the night. Nothing moved for the first few seconds until a large canine silhouette emerged from a nearby bush. Two sickly, yellow eyes stared back at me. I froze. Seconds of dead silence ticked by. For a moment, I thought it couldn't see me. Such thoughts, though, were short-lived, as the wolf started growling. Then it did the most unexpected thing I was expecting. It did not attack me. It did not take advantage of my weakened state. It did not draw any near to me. No, it did none of those things. A small part of me wished it did. Instead, it raised its head, released a loud howl, and sprinted off towards the firelit town. Questions were racing through my mind as I tried to comprehend the anomaly that had just occurred. It had definitely seen me, so why didn't it attack me? I wasn't exactly complaining that it didn't, but the action appeared to be completely out of its nature. I couldn't think of any other reason it would run off like that unless... A shiver ran down my spine. Not from the cold air, either. I pried my eye away from where the wolf had fled and rapped on the front door of the quaint little house. My response was almost immediate. "Go away! No candy here! Visitors not welcome on Nightmare Night!" The shout startled me, and I instinctively took a step back from the door. The voice was strangely familiar. Well, strangely, in the sense that I had rarely ever heard her scream anything. Normally, the owner of this voice spoke softly. I raised my fist again and gently tapped on the door. "Fluttershy?" I asked. "Is that you?" The door cracked open slowly, and a yellow head poked out into the night. "Hunter?" Fluttershy asked. What are you doing here? I thought you were helping McMacintosh with... Oh my goodness, what happened to you? Her teal eyes widened in shock as she took her first good look at me. They lingered on my face for a few seconds before falling upon the havoc behind me. What happened to Ponyville? She cried. It's complicated, I dumbly answered as I tried to form the correct words in my mind. Yeah, please come in. I'm starting to feel dizzy. The yellow Pegasus stood there in utter bewilderment, eyes transfixed on the horrendous scene of the town. I could only imagine what was going on through her head. I probably couldn't handle the situation any better if I was to see a similar fate fall upon my home. Fluttershy? I called, snapping her out of her trance. What? Oh, yes, come in, she said hurriedly. She jumped into the air with a few gentle flaps of her wings and escorted me inside, constantly casting nervous looks back at the town. Once we plunged into the darkness of our home, Fluttershy asked for me to wait as she turned on the lights. A moment later, the entire room was lit up. First thing I noticed was the little rodent infestation. It wasn't just rats, though I did spot a few, but squirrels, chipmunks, weasels, and rabbits. A few birds had taken residence around the house in some birdhouses. Fluttershy flew behind me and pulled up on my shoulders to alleviate some of the weight I was putting on my legs. Let's get you on the couch, she said softly. We managed to shuffle my body across the room towards a short, long green couch in the back of the room. Angel, dear, could you please scoot so that Hunter can lie down? She asked the snow-white rabbit perched on the side of the destination. The rabbit, however, didn't appear to be much of the shareable type, as it tried to stretch itself over as much of the couch as it could, which wasn't very much thanks to his small stature. Please, Angel, the Pegasus pleaded. The bunny, however, remained defiant. Fluttershy gave an embarrassed chuckle. Let's just set you in the chair, Hunter. Would that be alright? Sure. It took a few seconds, but we managed to get myself situated in the green seat next to the couch. Fluttershy brought in an old stool for me to use as a footrest. Well, this kind of brings back memories, doesn't it? Fluttershy asked with a sheepish grin. You don't know the half of it, I deadpanned. She appeared unsure of how to respond to my comment and moved to focus back to my wounds. How's about we take that shirt off your face so we can see what the damage is? I nodded and slowly began to remove my makeshift bandage from my face. Immediately, sharp spikes of pain erupted across my countenance where the coagulated blood was ripped from raw skin. My face contorted, succeeding in only causing more scabbed blood to rip off. When all was said and done, the left side of my face felt as if it was ablaze. Oh my, that's a lot of blood. I could already feel the warm liquid leaking out of my wounds, traveling down my face. My vision turned hazy yet again as my dominant eye tried to assert its blurry image over the right. Fluttershy's worried image soon came into focus as my vision corrected itself. Rest here while I get my medical supplies, she meekly ordered. She disappeared to another part of the house. I greedily took this time of rest to my advantage and tried to alleviate myself from all of the chaos in my mind. Things were happening too quickly for me. This was my first chance in what seemed like an eternity to take a breather. Unfortunately, my busy mind couldn't take a hint and persisted in thinking about Ponyville. It was sickening to think about what could be happening in there. After seeing what happened to the guard, a pony that was trained to handle situations similar to this, I shuddered to imagine what horrid fate had befallen upon the relatively peaceful inhabitants of the town. Fluttershy returned quickly and began tending to my wounds, beginning with my face. As she cleaned the cuts, she asked me what all I knew about the current situation. I told everything I could, which unfortunately wasn't very much. The best I could do was describe what I had seen of Ponyville when I emerged from the Everfree. Anxiety was all too evident in her eyes as my tale progressed, but she managed to keep a calm composure the whole time. When asked how I obtained my wounds, I merely summed it up as a nasty encounter with a timber wolf. It wasn't a lie in the least, but I refrained to go into any further detail. A part of me felt a little worried about how Fluttershy might react if I revealed to her what I did. She was always the animal lover from what I had seen through my time spent with her, and I wasn't sure she would have been pleased with the lengths I'd gone to ensure my survival. As she was wrapping things up with my head, I told her of my strange encounter with the tin wolf from outside her home. She was equally uneasy about the wolf's strange behavior, but couldn't think of anything to do. "I just don't like it," I concluded as Fluttershy pressed a gauze pad against my wound. She molded the pad around my eye so that my vision wouldn't be impaired and began applying the medical tape. It was creepy and out of their nature in too many ways to just brush off. I doubt I'm getting any sympathy from them either. "Maybe not." Fluttershy's voice trailed off as if she was thinking out loud. "The howling. Wolves usually howl whenever they're trying to communicate with one another, usually when they want to rally their pack." The thought hung in the air for a while as its implications darkened the mood. "Or maybe you're just trying to sing?" Fluttershy added with a weak and hopeful smile. "Yeah," I chuckled. "Let's go with that one. Maybe you'll round up some of its buddies and sing us a few classical show tunes." We laughed a bit at the thought, though the tension in the air was still high-strung. We were both blatantly aware of what was inevitably going to happen. I suppose we were just trying to get a few laughs out before it came. "Are there any other wounds I need to look at?" Fluttershy asked. "Yeah, my leg," I answered while rolling up my pant leg. I swear, everything in this messed up world seems to just hate my legs. There was this one time my story was cut short as a howl pierced the air. Everything, me, Fluttershy, the little creature still in the room, froze. Yellow Pegasus suddenly darted to one of the windows and peered out into the night. Her head turned to me, and through her teal eyes she sent an understood message laced with fear. The timber wolves were coming. "Every pony, upstairs, now!" The cottage erupted into motion as Fluttershy tried to herd all of the animals to safety. I was struggling to get to my feet as birds flew around like agitated flies overhead and rodents scurried around like frenzied roaches on the ground. Everything was soon plunged into darkness as Fluttershy killed the lights. Fortunately, I was already climbing up the small steps when it happened. There was movement everywhere in the upper room. With the lack of light, it was impossible for me to distinguish any one shape. I could easily hear the nervous chirping and chattering, though. In fear that I might step on one of the minuscule creatures, I stood still in the sea of shifting silhouettes. Fluttershy gently floated up the stairs, bathed in orange light from the candle she held in her hooves. The small fire lit up a few feet around her, giving her the appearance of an angel prepared to shield me from the darkness outside. "I've barricaded all of the doors and windows the best I could," the Pegasus announced with a wary smile. "It's not much, but it should be able to hold them off for a while." The news provided some comfort, little as it may have been. It was just going to delay the inevitable, but at the moment, I was perfectly fine with a few more seconds of life. A loud bang sounded downstairs, like two heavy objects hitting each other at full force. Startled by the sudden clash, Fluttershy threw the candle into the air. A split second later, I was tackled by a very frightened Fluttershy, who wrapped her hooves around my torso with a grip that could match a boa's. I watched as a small candle flickered in the air and extinguished as it hit the floor. A chorus of barks and growls erupted from all sides, and just when I figured the situation couldn't get any worse, I heard his voice. "I know you are in there, vermin," the wooden humanoid announced. His rough and muffled voice filled the air. "My scout has reported your presence to me. Surrender yourself at once, unless you wish for my wolves to break into this home. I assure you that your first option will be much less bloody." The bloodthirsty barking intensified as if to prove his point. "Who is that?" Fluttershy stuttered. "Have I ever told you about the timber wolf man thing?" I asked, my voice a little shaky from the situation and the shaking Pegasus clung to me. Another loud bang sounded from downstairs as the creature assaulted the barricades Fluttershy had placed. "No." "I thought I would have mentioned him," I replied. I was desperately trying to keep cool, with death literally being at the front door. But anyone could easily see through my clumsy disguise. It's a complicated story. Maybe we can talk about it later? Of course, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that there wouldn't be a later, but it felt comforting to think so. With Fluttershy still attached to my side, I waded through the sea of animals to a nearby window. What I saw only confirmed my fears. Timberwolves were running rampant around the house, yapping at each other and occasionally ramming into the side of the house, which resulted in a dull thump that echoed through the building. There was no escape. One of the wolves stopped and glared into the window. Our eyes met, and the beast let out an ear-splitting howl. The other timber wolves froze instantly. An eerie silence fell upon the cottage. I stood before the window, unable to tear myself away as the humanoid slowly came into view. His glowing yellow eyes stared daggers into mine. His expression changed, however, after a few seconds ticked by, and his scowl was replaced by a look of subtle amusement. "Tell me, young one," he spoke, "do you know what you are clinging to?" The question was obviously for Fluttershy. Her grip threatened to snap my back, but she gave no reply. "Of course you don't," the humanoid carried on. "I would be surprised if you did. It is my duty to keep beasts like him away from this harmonic world. They do nothing but corrupt what they touch. It would be wise of you to relinquish him to me, so that I may deal with him." Fluttershy was speechless. She looked up to me with frightful eyes. I was scared that she might obey the woodman at first, but such thoughts were dashed away as a small smile formed on her lips. She made an audible gulp, turned back towards the window, and shook her head in defiance. The woman's face reverted back to a scowl. "I did say that it was my duty to keep his kind out of this world, didn't I?" he asked in an aggressive tone. "I will not shy away from using whatever means necessary to accomplish my sole goal. If you do not surrender the human on free will, then I shall take him by force. And trust me, when I use force, it is brutal." I protectively wrapped an arm around Fluttershy. I had seen firsthand the aftermath of this abomination's force, and I wasn't about to let a similar fate to the guards were to fall upon Fluttershy on my watch. "You don't have to do this," I whispered into her ear. "You don't have to sacrifice yourself over me." "I know," she whispered back, "but I would never give up on a friend." She nestled her head into my chest, eyes clamped shut. It was in that moment I was suddenly filled with an odd sense of defiant confidence. I glared at the woodman as if to say, "Do your worst." It appeared as if he was prepared to do just that. "So be it," he said, almost in a sigh as he raised his left arm out to the side. I watched in horror and awe as the ligament began convulsing in irregular shapes. The woman bore no expression of pain throughout the ordeal. A long wooden rod sprouted out of his wrist and continued to grow outwards. Soon, a razor-sharp spear lined in thorny vines and tipped with a stone that glinted in the moonlight was fully formed. He plucked it out of his wrist with his right hand as if nothing had happened and rested it by his side. "I was hoping that no more blood from our pony would be shed tonight," he said. "It appears that I will be disappointed." His arm drew back, ready to plunge the spear through the window. I wasn't about to make myself an easy target. Instead, I slunk away from the window and hunkered down against an adjacent wall. would have been nice to say that I was fearless at that moment, that I was prepared to take on the chaos that was about to ensue. But in all honesty, saying that couldn't have been farther from the truth. It wasn't that I was afraid of the spear. No, that didn't worry me in the least bit. I was scared of what would happen after I crashed through the window. The wolves would come in and wreak havoc. In my mind, I could already picture the devastation. The blood-smeared walls and floor, and the unidentifiable carcasses. I fully returned Fluttershy's embrace and pulled her as close as I could, and anticipated the sound of shattering glass. But it never came. A brilliant light erupted from outside, flooding the room in a blinding white as a thunderous boom quickly followed. A mighty voice screamed at the top of its lungs, causing everything inside the cottage to rattle. "Enough is enough!" The light was enough for me to be curious to the point of looking back out the window. The familiar voice was just an extra incentive. Could that really have been her? I thought hopefully as I rushed back to the window. The wooden man had his eyes shielded with an arm. Between me and the house lay a smoldering pile of sticks and vines that had once been a spear. The scene stayed like that for a split second before midnight blue blur fell from the heavens and landed directly between the humanoid and the window. Hard. The entire earth seemed to shudder from the pony's impact. Cracks formed in the ground around her royal hooves. A wave of blue magic erupted from her horn, knocking back all of the timberwolves that were still caught off guard from her entrance. As the magical wave dissipated into thin air, the only two figures that remained in the yard were the humanoid and Princess Luna. "Thou hast taken a step too far from thine boundaries, Thorn!" Luna shouted, wings flared open for emphasis. "Explain the meaning of this treachery!" Thorn? My eyes shifted to the tall, wooden beast with newfound curiosity. Treachery? Thorn chuckled. "I am doing only that which I must. Nothing more, and certainly nothing less." "And what deity bestowed upon you the right to murder innocent ponies?" Luna challenged. "We know for a fact that it was not our sister, nor was it us." Thorn recomposed himself. His canine legs straightened a bit more, along with his back, and his hands morphed into fists planted firmly at his sides. "You forget that I do not fall under your jurisdiction, princess." He spat the last word out as if it was poisonous. "I will not neglect the one duty I was given, even if it means I must take extraordinary measures. Those who have fallen were trying to impede my progress." The princess shook her head in disbelief and spoke with a much calmer tone than before. "Your isolation has impaired your judgment. You are not thinking clearly." "Ha! How ironic that you are giving me this speech," Thorn retaliated. "As I recall, you did not fare well after yours." Dead silence descended upon the yard. Fluttershy had long since removed herself from me. Nearly every eye, human, pony, and critter was glued to the window. Curiosity had fully taken over. I was fully engrossed in the scene that was playing out before me.
"It's very interesting what all we're learning about these two, isn't it?"
The voice mused.
"They appear to know each other fairly well. We wonder what other secrets the princess is hiding."
If the voice wasn't inside my head, I probably wouldn't have heard it. Even still, I was too busy trying to assess what was happening down there to pay it much mind. I could see Thorn's mouth moving, but his words were lost somewhere between him and the glass barrier that separated us. Luna's back was still facing us, but her body language suggested that she was unhappy with whatever they were talking about. Thorn's eyes flickered through the window and into me. The wooden frame of his wrist shifted. Luna's horn ignited menacingly, and she struck the ground with a foreleg. I leaned in closer, trying desperately to figure out what was happening. A second later, I had my answer. Thorn swung an arm in the window's direction, and his hand detached from his wrist. It was connected solely by a vine as it rocketed towards the window, more specifically towards me. At the exact moment, a jagged ring formed around him, glowing in a blue aura similar to the one that surrounded Luna's horn. I didn't pay too much attention to that specific detail, however, as I shoved myself away from the window at the side of the projectile. A loud crash filled the air as the claw/hand burst through the window, creating a shower of shattered glass in the process as it reached for my shoulder. Thankfully, my overcoat and white t-shirt hindered the claws that dug into my shoulder, though a small portion of skin was still penetrated. Then, the razor-sharp fingers closed, scraping away some skin as it clamped onto my clothes. Princess Luna lifted her head, and the earth around Thorn magically shot up into the air. With its source flying out of sight, the slack of the vine connected to Thorn to his hand promptly tightened and pulled me through the window. In a shower of window debris, I was lifted a few yards higher into the air before the hand lost its grip on me. My momentum carried me up to a few more feet for a good half-second before gravity kicked in and I started falling. I hit the ground with a dull thud. The impact knocked the wind out of me and my lungs, and I laid there as I tried to recollect my breath. The whole ordeal took a little less than 5 seconds. "Hunter!" The dull clopping of hooves thundered up to me. My view of the spinning constellations in the night sky were eclipsed by a midnight blue pony's head. "Hunter, are you all right?" "What took you so long?" I grunted with a ghost of a smile. It was slowly becoming easier to inhale the cold air. When the world became reoriented, I rose to a sitting position. The blood rushed out of my head, and the dizzying sensation that followed forced me to lie back down. "You almost missed the party." The corners of her lips tugged upward slightly. "My apologies for not coming sooner. Had I known Thorn was here, I would have come sooner." "Friend of yours?" Whatever trace of a smile Luna bore vanished instantly. "In a sense," she simply said. The princess raised her head and scanned the cottage and its yard. "Have you seen Fluttershy by any chance?" "I'm here, Your Highness," Fluttershy's voice called. I rolled my head back and saw her galloping from the front of her house. She came to a sudden stop a few feet before me. "Oh, goodness! Hunter, are you hurt?" No, I'm fine, really," I waved her off. "Just a few scratches on the shoulder, nothing to worry about." The mare didn't appear very convinced, but before she could make a remark, the princess interjected. "I do not mean to be rude," she said, "but this is not a proper place for conversing. We must return to Ponyville. The town hall has been secured by my guards, and will offer protection from the timber wolves. We must have haste, though. I fear that we will not hold Thorn off for long." Fluttershy and I agreed without hesitation. In no time, I was back on my feet, and we set our course to Ponyville. We kept a brisk pace, not quite a running one, though. My right calf was flaring in pain as the wooden remnants of the timber wolf's teeth continued to slowly rip up the surrounding skin. The pain was becoming more tolerable as time progressed, but the dull ache still remained. "So," I said as we were nearing the first houses, "I guess we're pretty lucky that you showed up when you did, Princess Luna. A few minutes later and Woody would have made us dog chow." She didn't respond at first, so I continued. "How did you know that we were in danger?" "Honestly, I didn't," Luna replied, much to my shock. "Twilight and Applejack were growing anxious of Fluttershy's well-being, and requested that I check on her and bring her back to the town hall. It was purely coincidental that I arrived when I did." "Are they safe?" Fluttershy asked worriedly. "Are all of my friends okay?" The princess hesitated. "Mostly. Twilight and Applejack are safe inside the town hall as we speak. Rarity is safe inside the Carousel Boutique. In fact, she turned it into a safe haven as well. Some of the ponies that couldn't make it to town hall are inside her store." There was a long pause. "And Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash?" Fluttershy pressed. Luna sighed. I am afraid no pony has seen them since before the attack. Big Macintosh said that the last place he saw them was when he and Hunter dropped them off in the woods. So they never completed their round with the foals? I asked. No, they did not. We were already a few houses inside Ponyville. Little resistance met us as we sneaked through the streets. Every time we did, Princess Luna dealt with it personally. It was quite astonishing to see her work her magic. So powerful, so efficient. It was almost mind-boggling to think that the source was right next to me. The devastation wrought by the Timberwolves was nerve-wracking, and it only grew more worse the further we progressed. At first, the only damage worth noticing were a few scratch marks on the doors and the occasional ripped-up banner. Eventually, the carnage escalated to attractions that were utterly destroyed beyond recognition of fires that contaminated the air with the foul stench of smoke. It was staggering to think that there was a festival filled with happy and carefree ponies just an hour ago. Finally, the sanctuary known as the town hall broke through the houses. A large dark blue dome had been constructed around it, keeping out the havoc that was flooded the rest of the town. The sight was overwhelming. Joy was swelling up within me. It didn't even bother me that there was still a good distance between us and it, perhaps some 20-odd houses and then a bridge. We made a mad dash down the street. I was struggling to keep up with my companions, but at the moment it didn't matter. Each step that I took was another step closer to safety, and my hope grew higher and higher. My hope grew and grew, until it was cut down by the piercing howl of a wolf. I made the stupid mistake to slow down and turn around at the noise. I already knew what the sound was, but it made no sense for me to. The only thing it accomplished was confirmation. Thorn had returned along with his pack. They were a long ways away. I could have made it to safety with spare time if I didn't slow down, and were quickly covering the distance. Thorn did not appear to be in the lead. Instead, he allowed his hounds to catch up with us. Hunter, now is not the time to observe! The mention of my name snapped me back into reality. Run, now! My body suddenly kicked into gear with newfound energy. I broke into a sprint towards the safe haven, adrenaline pulsing through my body. I counted down the distance between me and the bridge. 5 houses away. 4 houses away. 3 houses away. The wolves' barking was getting much louder. I knew it was going to be a close shave. The Timberwolves could easily outrun me. I just hoped in my head start would be enough. 1 house away. Bridge? I nearly stumbled as I climbed the small incline of the bridge. There were now only a few yards between me and safety. One of the barks sounded behind me, dangerously close. Just a little bit closer. There was a sudden snag on the front of both of my shoulders, jerking me to a halt. My fingers were merely a few inches from the man-sized portal through the force field. The Timberwolf's growling was right behind me, muffled by some foreign object. Only when I felt the tug of my shoulders pull me back as if that I realized with horror that the wolf had me by the coat and was dragging me away from my goal. Princess Luna was just on the other side of the dome, head dropped low in exhaustion. I struggled to find the voice to call her name, but fear had a death grip on my vocals. It was by chance that she stole a look behind her, and my salvation as her eyes widened in shock. She leaped out of the portal, wings flared open and horn charging. "Begone, foul creature!" she roared as her horn released its lethal blast of magical energy. It was my best guess that it struck home. The force that was tugging me back was suddenly alleviated, and I stumbled forward. Luna wasted no time on waiting for me to enter the portal of my own accord, and lunged forward at me, grabbed onto one of my with her forelegs, and pulled us through the portal with one mighty flap of her wings. "Close the opening! Now!" I lay down on the frigid earth, face down and exhausted beyond comprehension. My breathing was heavy, though it could not match the princess's. My body was quickly becoming drenched in sweat, but at the moment it didn't matter anymore. A small smile crept onto my mouth, followed by a quiet chuckle. I made it. I was safe. A little bit later, we burst through the front doors of the town hall, Princess Luna and I. My heart was pounding in my ears as the effects of my adrenaline rush were slowly beginning to fade. I was barely able to stand upright at the moment. The princess extended a wing behind me in case I suddenly fell. Just like 2 days ago, the room was filled with multicolored ponies. The main difference was that the air was much more morbid. Most of the ponies didn't even acknowledge our entrance. They were too preoccupied with resting and healing. Those that did turn their heads were not exactly the ray of sunshine they used to be. They stared with dreary eyes, physically and emotionally exhausted from the mayhem outside. Far in the back, and on top of the stage, rested a wounded. A handful of ponies were rushing to and fro, desperately trying to quell the groans and moans of the injured. Unfortunately for them, they were about to have a new customer. Save for the dull groans emanating from the back, the entire room was dead silent. It was unsettling seeing ponies like this. They were always so cheery, always so happy. One pony flashed a smile as we walked by, and I tried to return the reassuring gesture. When we arrived at the stage, the nurses and doctors took me off Luna's hands and escorted me to an open spot on the floor. I laid down without question, and they quickly began to check me over. The princess lingered for a while, checking on her subject until one of her guards came up to speak with her. Your Highness, we seem to be having a small problem at the barrier, he said in a hushed tone. What is it? Luna asked. He hesitated at first, not out of reluctance, but out of confusion. One of the Timberwolves, something with the Timberwolves, is requesting your audience. We don't know what to do. We've tried driving off, but it's very persistent. Thorn, the princess remarked bitterly. Very well. If he wants an audience, I'll give him an audience. She was about to leave when she paused and added, It appears as if you have company, Hunter. With that, she left without another word, following her guard to the exit of the building. Curious of her last remark, I turned my head around, and sure enough, 3 mares were standing beside me. Fluttershy, Applejack, and Twilight Sparkle, the last of the 2 still wearing their costumes. How are you feeling, Hunter? Applejack asked. Decent, I answered. My eyes were stuck on the purple unicorn. She was trying to avoid eye contact. Something about her presence felt off. What are you doing here? The question was originally intended for Twilight, but the Earth Pony interpreted it differently. Zecora told us what you did at the hayride, she started. How you risked your life to hold off that Timberwolf. That was mighty brave of you. If you hadn't done it, Zecora said y'all would have been up a stream without a paddle. So they made it back safely? I asked. Sure did. Fortunately, they arrived before the wolves did, and were able to round them up before anything happened. I felt some weight lift off of my shoulders at the revelation. It was comforting to hear something good at the moment. So, what did I miss? Applejack filled me in on the details that led up to the invasion. I listened intently, taking in every word as she spoke. Twilight added a few details here and there that Applejack overlooked. According to them, Big Macintosh had given the citizens of Ponyville a heads up before the wolves attacked. They were able to herd most of the ponies to safety by the time the Timberwolves arrived. A few stallions and mares stayed to fight. Most of them ended up here, and neither Applejack nor Twilight knew what became of the others, but they assumed they had fled to the Carousel Boutique. No pony knows why the Timberwolves attacked either, Twilight added. There have been a few accounts in which some ponies ran into a pack of them in the forest, but never has it escalated into something this big. How dare you! Luna's voice reverberated throughout the town hall. Every head in the room snapped to the front doors when they suddenly flew open and a very agitated Princess Luna entered. The audacity of it all! She shouted incredulously. How dare he defy me! His punishment shall be increased tenfold for such acts. Many ponies, mainly guards and doctors, rushed to her side trying to calm her down. Though she stopped her shouting, I could still see a fire raging in her eyes as she strode toward the large room and up to the platform where I lay. What was that all about? Twilight asked. Is there something wrong, Princess? Yes, there are many things wrong, Luna exclaimed. Would you mind sharing them with us? I asked as I sat up. Maybe we could be of some help. Her cold eyes bored into mine with curiosity. For a second I was worried I had said something wrong. Then her expression softened. I know where they are, she said bluntly. Who? Fluttershy pressed. Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie, Luna snapped. The yellow Pegasus recoiled from the harsh remark. My apologies, she sighed. I know where they are. They ain't hurt, are they? Applejack asked. I swear if them wooden rascals roughed up my friends. No, they are fine, Luna interjected. She hesitated a moment before continuing. They are being held hostage by the Timberwolves. Questions flowed through my mind, and the mare's mouths looked a waterfall. Please, hold your tongues, Luna shouted over to us. She cast a few glances around. A lot of ponies were beginning to stare. The Timberwolves have agreed to release them and leave the town in peace, but they wish for something in return. Well, what do they want? Applejack asked. Jewels, wood, maple syrup? We'll give them anything they want. What's their price? I already knew what it was before the princess answered, though. The look she gave me said it all, but it did little to stop the dread from washing over me. They wish for us to give them Hunter,